in the following slides is to put the problems on the table, to give you the context, and then from now we can start a fruitful discussion that can be done offline if we want, and we have to decide how. Or we can also organize some more, let's say, specific follow-up, maybe with a more restricted audience, but it's up to us. So I think that these are the big points that are the foundation of the process. Okay, the first is a theoretical question, because I think that this is quite clear. In the project, we're not asking anyone to host a trusted node, because this would be too difficult to do. But at the same time, hosting a trusted node is the only point of having a decentralized trusted framework. So in terms of how we present our results in documents, in deliverables, of course, and in reviews, it should be clear that even if we are using a cloud service or more than one cloud service currently for the experimentation, this is just because we need a practical solution, because the real solution is to be hosting a trusted node. Now, the question is, who is going to host it? I mean, this might be a requirement for everyone that belongs to a supply chain, that they should host a trusted node, but it is not necessarily true. We might say that in a very big supply chain, there might be a number of companies who are, let's say, the first and second tier of the value chain, and they will host a trusted node, and all the other companies, which might be hundreds in some cases. Let's think about the automotive sector. Maybe they don't need to host a trusted node at all, so they might be managed as users by one of the main companies. But this is something that we need to discuss and then write somewhere. Then the second point is that I still don't know, and I don't know if, Joachim, you have a more clear idea of this. When we write an indicator or a set of indicators in a quality hallmark, what is the object we are referring to? We are referring to a product item. We might also need, if we have a process in which we produce items that then are assembled into a higher level product. So we might be using also a reference to the assembled product. So all these questions need to have a generic answer, I think. We might have then specific answers once we go into the details of each use case. But in general, I think that we need a clear statement on what is the object that the quality hallmark is referred to. Okay. And then there is the third question, that is to what extent we need to customize the structure of the quality hallmark document. My personal catch is that we need a case-by-case customization. But if you have a better idea, so if you have an idea on how we can define a standard through which we can express any kind of quality hallmark in any kind of use case, then it's fine for me. This is something that we absolutely need to decide in order to move forward with the deliverable 6.3, because this is one of the fundamental decisions. Then, once we have this more clear but very generic view on the quality hallmark process, we need to choose the options, one of the three options that are available for the development of the trusted framework prototype. The first option is what I call the minimum viable product, which is basically what you have already seen when I showed the open API of the trusted framework. The assumption is that we have one single quality hallmark document that is published on the trusted framework once it is complete. It is something that is monolithic, so there is no way of adding linked information. It is opaque. It means that the trusted framework doesn't know anything about what is written inside. So there is no way for the trusted framework to validate this quality hallmark document. Okay, and so it's the trusted framework in this case is just a notarization service. It takes a opaque document and stores it and provides a ledger record for it. The second option is a bit more ambitious than the first, and this is what I mentioned before, that instead of having a monolithic quality hallmark document, we have a composite object, so that we can add more and more information along the life cycle of the process and the life cycle of the product, but they all belong to the same logical object. This is something we can do, but again, it is opaque in terms of what the trusted framework knows of the document itself. Third and the last option is the most ambitious one. And here we have the trusted framework that is acting as a validator in the context of the quality hallmark. So it must know what the quality agreements are, and then, of course, it should be aware of the contents of the quality hallmark document, and so it should be able to parse and to understand what is written there, to match it with the quality agreement, and to decide if the statements that are made there are fine or not. So in this case, you might have the case in which the information that is added to the quality hallmark is rejected because it is not compliant. And then this is something that needs to be decided in the coming weeks before we release deliverable 6.3. And what we can do today is just this. So we cannot have an answer on all this, but we need to agree on how to proceed from today, what will be the collaborative process, because we need basically to make this decision and also to start gathering requirements from the end users. I prepared a few slides that go into detail about the three options that I mentioned you. I don't think that we need to discuss this much further because the basics of the three options I have already explained, but to be a bit more specific, I can tell you that even in the minimum viable product, it is true that the body of the quality hallmark document is an opaque object. It's not something that the trusted framework will ever be able to read and understand, but instead there will be a header, and this header will be actually a standard structure, but this standard structure will only contain metadata that can be used for search and discovery. For example, I think that the first important thing to put in the header will be all the references to the object that the quality hallmark is about. So if it is a product, if it is a process, there will need to be a link, a pointer. I don't even know if a quality hallmark might refer to more than one item. It might be possible, but in that case, it becomes a bit more complicated, but we can do that. And so this is the standard header that I am sure we can, in the end, all agree on. It's not something that I expect to change from one use case to another. Instead, what you have in the body is something that will be totally use case specific. So I think that people inside that are involved in a pilot will be free to define their own structure without any coordination with the other pilots, because the important thing is that inside the pilot, all of them understand what is written here. Moreover, we can also provide, the trusted framework will be able to provide a generic tool to run queries also on the contents of the body, even if the trusted framework doesn't understand the structure that is in the body. We have, fortunately, a technology available, doesn't need to be developed in the scope of the project, which is called the JSON path. And it means that if a pilot defines their own structure of the body using JSON as the language, then they could also define their own JSON path queries. And the beauty of this system is that once they have stored their quality hallmark documents on the trusted framework, they can send their JSON path queries to the framework, and the framework will be able to execute these queries without knowing at all the structure of the body and still get consistent results. This is, in my view, is a viable option for the project. I'm not sure it is the best one. And the second option is this. It might seem a lot more complicated, but it is not at all. It's exactly the same as the option one. And so but the difference here is that we start with the master record, and then we can add sort of children records. All of them are independent records for the sake of the blockchain. So each time you write one of these, you're writing a new record on the blockchain, you're writing a new body in the data node. But logically, when you read back this information, either because you make a direct access by ID, or because you run some query, you run some search using the same JSON path query that we have talked before, then you will get back everything that is related to the logical record. This is useful in the case when the process of gathering quality hallmark data is not something that is atomic, that happens in a point in time, but is something that happens over a time window. And so it might be useful to keep adding this information to the master record. Last is option 3, which is totally different. And in this case, we will have much more work to do. And I'm saying this not just from the perspective of the Trusted Framework team, even if it is true that there will be indeed much more effort to be put into the task. But we will also need a deeper involvement of the end users, of the pilots, because what we will do in this case is to write a specific smart contract for each use case, which means we are basically doing a mini project inside of each pilot. In the smart contract, we have the business logic of the use case. Well, not of all the use case, but we will have the definition of the quality standards built in, hard-coded into the smart contract. And in this case, the quality hallmark document will have a structure that will be understood by the smart contract, and the smart contract will be able to make decisions. And so in all three cases, the structure of the OpenAPI is similar. So it's not going to change much in terms of the endpoint, the service endpoints. Well, in RESTful jargon, they call them resources. But let's call them service endpoints, which is probably more clear to everyone in this audience. The service points will be, the service endpoints will be more or less the same. There will be a difference in the actual data that you are passing along in the body of your request. So these are the three options. And to conclude my presentation, and to leave now the floor to whatever short discussion we might have in the last 10 minutes, I think that as soon as possible we have to reach a final decision on what of the three options we are going to use, because this is something that is blocking for us to any work that we can do from now on. Depends on this decision.